At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at Essilor.com.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner, by knockout, is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
You're listening to the Animation Addicts podcast with the Rotoscopers, episode 193, Space Jam, Sad Charles. Welcome to the Animation Addicts podcast with the Rotoscopers, the number one place to get your animation fix with animation addicts just like you. Each episode, we dive into the wonderful world of animation featuring Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, and everything in between. From hilarious discussions and movie reviews to interviews with industry insiders, this show's mission is to brighten your day through our love and appreciation of animation. So hop on your nerdy couch, grab some snacks, and get ready to hang out with your animation besties because it's time to dive into today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Animation Addicts podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Stradling.
And I'm Chelsea Robson.
And today we are heading back into the 90s. We're hopping in our spaceship and we are going to be reviewing a 1996 classic, Space Jam. So this is a very interesting movie, and I'm really excited to talk about Space Jam. Space Jam is a film that I definitely grew up with and had seen many, many, many times. So I'm interested to hear Chelsea's thoughts on the film. So let's dive right into it.
Today, the beverage aisle looks a lot different than it used to. America's beverage companies are working together. We're delivering the options everyone wants. In fact, nearly 60% of beverages Americans buy have zero sugar. You'll find more variety than ever, including more of your favorites, now available with zero sugar. You'll also find more sizes and clear calorie information on the front of every can, bottle, and pack. We know when it comes to finding balance, the more choices, the better.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
The PC gave us computing power at home, the internet connected us, and mobile let us do it pretty much anywhere. Now generative AI lets us communicate with technology in our own language using our own senses. But figuring it all out when you're living through it is a totally different story. Welcome to Leading the Shift, a new podcast from Microsoft Azure. I'm your host, Susan Ettlinger. In each episode, leaders will share what they're learning to help you navigate all this change with confidence. Please join us. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Everybody get up, it's time to slam now. We got the real jam going down. Welcome to the Space Jam. Here's your chance, do your dance at the Space Jam.
All right, before we dive into our review of Space Jam, I wanted to give some general information about the film. The studio was Warner Brothers. The director was Joe Pytka. Release date November 15th, 1996. Budget $80 million. And the box office was $230.4 million. If you're not familiar with the plot of Space Jam, basically it's Michael Jordan gets kidnapped by the Looney Tunes, who need him to help win a basketball game so that way they don't become slaves to another alien race. Yeah, that's what it's about, guys. That's Space Jam.
That's what it's.
So there's a lot going on in Space Jam. We have aliens, we have the Looney Tunes, we have Michael Jordan. This big smash of all sorts of things, and you think that's not going to work out very well, but it kind of does. Before you get into your initial thoughts, what's your background with this film?
So my initial background on this film is we never had it in my house. And so I can't say that I have any nostalgia for it because I literally watched it before this episode. So this is the first time. However.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. However, I always wanted to watch this movie. This was always a movie that was like as a kid, I remember like that one time when you came over and you were trying to get Marissa to buy the Little Mermaid. I went over to another guy's house and they had it, and I always had that same thing of like, hey, how about we watch that one? That would be great. Like,
and I'm surprised they turned it down. I feel like a lot of guys really love this movie.
He obviously was not on his game that day. It was so, but I was never able to watch this movie, and I always felt a little bit like, dang it. But then about a couple years ago, I guess, the DVD just showed up in our house. And every time I looked at it, I thought about that time when I wanted to have that guy, like, we were like 10 or something like that. So it's like when I was at my friend's house and I was like, can we watch this movie? And we didn't end up watching it. And so, but at the same time, I've never had enough of a desire to actually put it in and watch it because it's like, it's there. There's a lot of other things that I could watch. Doesn't really seem like applicable right now. So yeah, that's my background with this film. And then we decided to put it on the podcast and I watched it.
Yeah, my brothers were big into basketball, and obviously this was a film which we watched many, many times in my house. So I have a lot of these lines memorized, and there's a lot of nostalgia to this film. Also enjoy basketball and sports and golf and baseball. And so we get all three of those in this film. So it's really, really fun to go back and watch it. I thought that it was pretty quick. It felt like it didn't drag on. It gets to the main event, which is the big basketball game, pretty quickly. There's just a few little plot points to get there along the way. But
see, I had the opposite.
Okay, interesting. So give me your first thoughts of your film now that you've set the stage.
I felt like it just took so long. Like there was just a whole, every sequence was a montage of some kind. And I'm like, all right, we get it. You play basketball. All right, we get it. You don't play basketball. You're now a baseball player. Okay, we get it. That you're going to start playing basketball again. Like it's just, I get it in the fact that he was larger than life. He was Michael Jordan, the man, the myth, the legend throughout the 90s. And actually, basketball of the 90s was the only time that I consistently followed any type of team sport.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very much aware of the all-star, Charles Barkley was I'm from Arizona. Morgan and I are from Arizona. So it's like, especially during the 90s when the Suns were like kicking it, everybody knew who Charles Barkley was, and he was our man. And even today, I respect Charles Barkley. Barkley's my man. Main reason, nostalgia of you were the guy that I watched when I was like 9-10 years old. Like you were cool. The plot points, it was just so rambling. It just felt like it rambled. Now you.
Yeah. So, this whole premise of this film is so funny. I'd already explained what it's about, but you get Michael Jordan, who is as big as can be. And I love that they play around this concept of him like retiring and playing baseball, which, he retired in 93 and came back later, but which he does come back. By the time this film had come back, he was back playing basketball. But the fact that it focuses on this period of time where he was going to become a baseball player.
He was failing at it.
Yeah, and he was not a great baseball player. And I think even he would admit that, but hey, good for trying and trying to follow your dreams and whatnot. But I just love that that's a part of the storyline that this, he's kind of not washed up, but he's just given up. He's retired from basketball. He's doing baseball, but the Looney Tunes need him. So he has to get those old college shorts and shoes out and help the Looney Tunes beat the bad guys.
Didn't he come out, he came out of retirement after this?
Around the same time.
Yeah. So I feel like it was just like, he was just taking a break. He knew he was going to jump back in. And so he was like, I need another way to establish my dominance by putting myself in a Looney Tunes movie.
Yeah. It's really funny because this film was, in development for a while, and they wanted Michael Jordan, but then at the same time, the studio wanted like an actual actor,
right?
Because athletes and sometimes these other people are not necessarily the best actors, and their delivery and their lines are just really hard, but they couldn't find anyone better, basically. No one wanted to take on the role, and it works because it is Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Right? Again, like this film could have just been about any basketball person. They could have found an actor, but the fact that it's about Michael Jordan and it's so very much aligns with what happened in his real life just makes it that much better. I don't know. It's just the actual, points of his career of retiring and coming back are in it. It's just, Michael Jordan was everything in the 90s.
Oh,
so
no. Yeah. And I, especially, have you watched the documentary
The Last Dance on Netflix? Yeah.
So I haven't been able to watch the whole thing, but I was able to watch the first episode, and I have a lot of respect for people who are able to be excellent in whatever they decide to do. And he was excellent, and everybody that he surrounded himself and all of the major players that they had at this time, they were all excellent at what they did. And I really appreciate just being able to see that. And like, as a side note, going back to like, he said that he just decides to go into baseball. And it's like, if you are excellent in one sport, you're going to be above average, if nothing else, in most every other sport. But I'm looking at it and they couldn't have made this film, I don't think, with anyone other than Michael Jordan, because he was larger than life. And it wasn't just, and there was one point in time where, so Wayne Knight, they have him and he plays, I'm looking at the IMDb on his page, and it's just like all of the, like this one as himself, Bugsy Malone as himself, like Charles Barkley as, so it's like, oh, okay, good. I'm glad you're all here. Like the whole premise of this was like, what was happening?
Well, it's like so contrived. It's like, okay, so we have Moron Mountain, which is this theme park that these aliens have. And the owner of it is Danny DeVito as Mr. Schwackhammer. And who
else would you get though? I mean,
right. Well, apparently they had a really hard time finding like any celebrity talent for this, because people were just like, no, I have to be a character, and I have to play against a celebrity or an athlete. I don't know about that, but he was really the only person that they could get for the voices to do that. But he's great. I love him as a good old villain. But he wants to find new attractions for his business that's failing. There's the kids like, this is boring. And so he decides that they need the Looney Tunes somehow, and so you got to send them to the Looney Tunes. Then somehow they decide that, okay, we're going to figure this out. Instead of them just capturing them like good aliens would do, they say, okay, well, we'll do it as a basketball game, which makes no sense. It's so contrived just to have the Michael Jordan plot point, right?
Yeah.
But like, we'll settle, okay, fine. Like, we won't take you. We'll settle this with a basketball game, an intergalactic basketball game. And then, of course, the bad guys cheat and they go to the real world and they steal the powers of various NBA basketball players who are quite good, and Charles Barkley being one of them.
Yeah. So we had Michael Jordan, we had Larry Bird, and Larry Bird, Michael Jordan always had this thing going. So it's like they're having their little golf game together. So they're friends still. And then you've got
his powers don't get taken.
No, but he's just there. Charles Barkley, we got Patrick Ewing, we have Muggsy Bogues.
Muggsy Bogues, Sean Bradley,
Larry Johnson. Yeah, those are the main ones.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I'm just like, what is this?
Yeah, so they steal their powers, and then now the Looney Tunes realize that they are totally outnumbered. So instead of them, I guess, stealing the powers of other NBA players because they don't have those abilities, they just decide we're going to get one basketball player.
They're also not maniacal that way,
right, but just one. Like we're not going to get a team of basketball players to help us out. Which would make sense, right? You think you would like stack your deck and get a really good bench. And it's like, oh, if they need me, I'll play. I'll be on the team, but this is my team. No, they just get the one and he happens to be out of retirement. And then they kidnap him through the golf hole and he gets sucked into Looney Tunes land. And so this is a 2D live action hybrid film, which a large majority of the filming was done on green screen for Michael Jordan, acting to no one.
Oh, poor Michael. Yeah, like there's just in the real world, they think that there's some type of virus going around.
I love that storyline. I think it is so great.
I was like, okay, is Space Jam really predicting like COVID shutdowns or something? That's my conspiracy theory right there. Space Jam was predicting COVID and the entire league being shut down because of this. It's just insane.
Yeah, I love this. I love the plot line of the basketball players who have lost their quote unquote basketball powers. And it's just so funny. The montage of them at the psychiatrist and Charles Barkley challenging the girl basketball team out, to a game. And they're like, you're not Charles Barkley. You're just some lookalike, because he's just horrible. And so they're like, get out of here. We don't want you.
He's doing this like Barkley sad walk to this like Barry Manilow song that's like, yeah. Oh my gosh. It's like, what is this music? Okay. And the music behind this is an epic soundtrack. Like you can't have grown up in the 90s without having some recollection of most every song on this album.
Yeah, this album was 6 times platinum.
Oh, totally.
Fly Like an Eagle, I Believe I Can Fly.
How many songs about flying can we get in here? Let's do it.
So many of these songs are just epic, amazing, classic. This was a very, 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 very good soundtrack. And then, the Space Jam theme song, like, everybody get up, we're gonna jam now.
Marissa loves this movie, is the thing. Like, she's actually, we've had the DVD and she's watched it on multiple occasions. And as I was sitting in the living room watching this movie, and Marissa comes up and she sits down. She's like, oh, this one. Okay. So she's just like, gets all comfortable next to me. And then she just starts quoting along as this whole movie keeps going. And she's like, that's my favorite part. This part where Daffy comes in and is like, says something, and she's like, had quoted before. She's like, oh yes. And they lose all of their skills and they have to be sad. Oh, it's great.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because the Looney Tunes they're very well known as being the Warner Brothers property. And they kind of had their golden age, in the 40s through 60s. Right. And they've been around, but by the 90s, like, do you ever remember those Warner Brothers stores?
Yeah.
Like they used to have these Warner Brothers stores that were at the mall, and they had a giant Bugs Bunny and a giant Daffy on the side, kind of
I think
encapsulating, as you entered in. And I remember going to those and loving the Looney Tunes stores, the Warner Brothers store. And they had these really cool t-shirts that were just kind of like a plain tee with a pocket. And then the character was embroidered in the pocket.
Oh, nice.
So I always would get those t-shirts and I loved them. But like Looney Tunes is so interesting because it really hasn't, like, they're classic and iconic, right? And I feel like even in our growing up, we were very familiar with the Looney Tunes cartoons. I feel like they were still getting at least some sort of play and replay. And then the WB network came around. And so there were some spin-off shows that were created, even before the WB was created. There was like Tiny Toons Adventures, which is not necessarily the original characters, but new characters. There was Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries. Like, I feel like they were trying to keep these characters prominent, but they haven't done a great job with it.
No.
And this was kind of one of the main things in the 90s that was Warner Brothers' attempt to keep their characters relevant, just like Disney has continued to do that. And I think the biggest thing is the theme parks. Yeah. The Looney Tunes characters have been in theme parks, but it's not necessarily, it's a Warner Brothers theme park. It's usually, Universal is where they end up
going to, over like Islands of Adventure, which got bought out by Universal. So, and it's mostly in Orlando, nothing in California. So you have a very regional connection to it in that way. And there's this one point in time where Wayne Knight, who's playing Stan, his publicity person, and if you watch Seinfeld, he played Newman. Anyway, so he's like going through and he has this moment where he talks about like every single brand deal, like he rolls into one sentence that Jordan has done. It's like right before the big game. And he's just like, oh, you're going to go grab your Jordans, get your Nikes, do this, and maybe grab a grab a Big Mac on the way in. Gatorade. It's like he just like goes through the whole list of all of these. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so right now I just did a quick search and I found a website called consequenceofsound.net. The link is going to be in the show notes. So if you want to click on that, it'll go to it. But it goes through and it like has videos of all of these commercials that he did since like back to 1985. So the Air Jordans, the original Takeoff, and then it's got to be the shoes. Like, I mean, and then it goes to the Ultra Star hair products by Michael Jordan. I'm like, oh my gosh. This was how this man made himself. Aside from, winning, being the biggest winner, like specifically, at the time he was one of the, on the team with the most conference championships, and the Chicago Bulls were it. And this era was just like full of amazing basketball players. And this is one of the other ways that he made himself just larger than life, like just omnipresent almost. Like you could not live through the 90s and not know exactly who Michael Jordan was.
So it's really funny. We have some of these classic characters. We have like a main group of Looney Tunes characters who we see. There's Bugs, there's Daffy, a few ancillary characters that we see. Marvin the Martian, he's the referee. There's Granny, she's sitting on the sideline.
It's Air Jordan.
Tweety is one of the main characters, the ones that you would expect, Sylvester. But we introduce a new character called Lola Bunny.
Lola. Well, at the 90s, they were really like pushing not only sexy, but incredibly overconfident, amazing specimen type person. Am I right in that?
Lola is your typical, she's just good at everything. Yeah. She's sexy. She's competent. She's don't call me doll. She's not putting up with any riffraff, calling her name. She's not standing up for that. But it's just funny because she's basically presented just to have more of a girl character, because not many of the Looney Tunes characters are female at all. And we need someone who's actually knows what they're doing. And it turns out that's like, hey, these tryouts for the basketball team. But she's very competent at basketball. She's great at basketball, and then turns into this love interest for Bugs, which it just comes out of nowhere, basically. Like you can tell she basically dunks on him. Yeah. Literally in the tryouts. And she's so much better than him. And he's kind of like, wow, what a babe, what a woman sort of thing, the jaw drop cartoon character. Right. And then, in the game, they get together and they kiss. And it was just funny to me. I'm like, oh, really? Did he need a love interest? And she was created specifically for this movie.
As far as pacing goes, I feel like this pacing it had a section and it would ramble on in that section. And then it would go to the next type of section and it would ramble on in there. So it just didn't really feel like it was going in a really direct path. And it doesn't feel like there was any real buildup to a story. As you mentioned before, it feels really contrived.
It's like we need this basketball game with Michael Jordan playing with the Looney Tunes against, bad guys. How do we get there?
But at the same time, like I'm able to step back a little bit and just kind of laugh at just the nonsense of this movie. And I can see why kids would have liked it and watched it multiple times, just because it's like, I don't know. I can see how there were different shows growing up where I was like, this kind of isn't that great. But, when I was younger, I was all into this, and this was all the characters were my faves. So it was just hit that spot, I guess, for a lot of people.
Yeah. Going back to, moments that really hurt the film is when, not really hurt the film, but just take away is the part where the Looney Tunes have to go back to the 3D world or the real world, and they have to get his pants and his shoes, because he's wearing golf shoes. So I definitely can't play in that. And so, he has to go back to the house and this undercover mission, and they have to get around the dog, and then the kids are in on it. They get the shoes, and then they go back, and it's like practice time.
Yeah. For everybody listening, I am so sorry that this probably seems just so chaotic, this episode, because that's kind of how I left this movie feeling. It's just like, what did I just watch? But there was this one part at the very beginning where the aliens are going to steal all of the basketball players' talents, and they're all in this like trench coat. And they're sitting next to this woman, and she's like, honey, I thought you were going to get better tickets this year. And he's like, this was the best ones I could get, honey. She's like, well, there's this weird guy doing something weird in his raincoat. And I'm like, okay, this is definitely hashtag things kids don't catch when they're as kid. I'm like, oh my gosh.
No.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, there's another moment later when he's talking to the therapist, and he's like, well, are there other areas where you're not able to perform? He looks at him, he's like, no. He's like, well, I gotta ask. Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh. There's just so many things.
It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of gags. When he walks into the basketball gym, and it's a total disaster, and they're like, nothing, a little spit shine will clean up, and they spit shine, and then they get it super clean, of course, because they're tunes. And then that's kind of where at the very end, because Michael Jordan is in the tune world, he's able to act a bit toony. And the way that he's able to have his Air Jordan moment is by fly like an eagle. And he's flying, and he's getting ready to dunk, but no, they stop him. And then he stretches his arm like Stretch Armstrong, and he keeps going and going and going. And boom, he saves the day. And first off, then there's that moment right before then where the bad guy, the Danny DeVito character, confronts him. And Michael Jordan's like, okay, well, let's like double or nothing. Let's do this offer. And I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, Michael, do not get invested in this. Like, why? He's like, these are my friends. I'm like, are they your friends? They kind of kidnapped you so you could help them out. But you're still kind of kidnapped, and you can't get home unless, yeah.
Well, and then there's the point where everyone's like, oh, we're so nervous. We're so nervous. He's like, guys, let's just go out there and have some fun. And I'm like, easy for you to say, Jordan. You're not being threatened with a lifetime of servitude here. Like, of saying the same jokes every single night.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, he gets himself involved in this, and he would be fine. Win or lose, he would be fine. But then he's like, if we lose, you can have me. And then they have the little montage of Michael Jordan having to sign autographs forever and lose to ever. And I like the animation of the Michael Jordan character in that, but I was just like, Michael, no, that's not a smart move, because you don't know what these guys are actually capable of. But because again, this is someone who just retired out of basketball. I know you're the greatest. Like, even Michael Jordan, probably 20 years, like, not having played basketball is better than 99% of the people playing basketball. Right. So like, he's only 1 or 2 years retired from basketball. He's still going to do great.
He's going to be way better than me in everything. Like, I'm never going, no, there would be no way ever that I would be like, yeah, let's play, Michael. No, thank you.
So, of course, the Tunes win. All things are great.
It ends up that way. Oh gosh.
And then he goes back and he gives the powers back to the other NBA players, and they're kind of weirded out. They're like, it's Michael. First off, these guys are all on different teams, but they all happen to be hanging out in the same gym just conveniently.
Oh.
Which would not be happening. They were the ones who lost their powers.
Right.
Powers. I keep saying powers, like their athletic abilities. And so I guess they're just like moping around in some random gym, and Michael knows where to find them. And he's like, hey guys, just touch the ball. And they're like all weirded out about it. Like, my guys just touch the ball, and then they get their powers back. And then, they say, well, hey, Michael, what, you're too good? You don't want to play with us? You lost it? He's like, oh no. And so then at the very end, it goes back to Michael Jordan. He's returning to basketball, which obviously mirrors what happened in his real life. And off we go. Things are great. But just the concept of how this came together, like how does a movie like this come together? So just like a little backstory of how this came together was in the early 90s, there were 2 Nike ads called Hair Jordan and Aerospace Jordan that featured Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny. Well, and this allowed them to make some tweaks to the Bugs Bunny character to modernize him. But they did so well, they figured, how can we turn this into a movie? Which naturally. So, okay, we have Michael Jordan and we have Bugs Bunny. Now we need to come up with a screenplay. And so, yeah, now we have Space Jam, which is very much a cult classic. If you go to this original Space Jam website, I think it's spacejam.com.
Oh, no. Is this still up?
This is one of the relics. Yeah, spacejam.com. I'll include this in the show notes. This is like one of the greatest websites in the history of websites because it's the original 1996 website. Like this was early days of the internet.
Wow.
And it is still alive and kicking. They haven't bothered to update it or change it or anything, which I personally love. And so, yeah, does this take you back?
Yes.
So you can click and you can see like the lineup and, it's so bad. Like the fact that this was someone's like, this was probably, who knows how much money was put into this.
So much money.
Souvenirs. You can click go to the Warner Studio store. It does go to the Warner Brothers shop, which has been updated, but like
Press Box Shuttle,
Jam Central. Then there's subcategories where you can find production notes, the filmmakers, photos from the film, the trailer.
The WB
man.
shop. It's like, okay, this is a normal site.
Yeah, they've forwarded that back to something totally normal, but yeah, just play around clicking that. Like the worst part about this is the navigation. Like when you click on a page, like for example, Planet Basketball, there's like subcategories on here where you can go. They are overlaid onto a photo of like a basketball gym. And it says player bios, the NBA, shooting hoops. And it's just from a modern day person, this is not how you set up a website. You don't have your links randomly in the middle of a photo, but it is so great. So go check it out. But there actually is a Space Jam 2 that is coming out, which will be featuring LeBron James. He's one of the producers, and the logo was actually kind of leaked a while ago. One of the animators posted a picture of his door, for production. He's working on, I think it was one of the Bancroft brothers who worked on the original one is back. Yeah. Tony Bancroft. And yeah, it's estimated to be released July 16th, 2021. Don't worry. Lola Bunny will be back along with, Bugs, Daffy, Tweety, Pepe Le Pew, Marvin the Martian. And, it's basically revamping this concept, but instead of Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny, it's LeBron James. And then of course there will be some other, I imagine, big name NBA stars that will be, but it's because this film is just such a cult classic and people can't let it go.
Yeah.
And it is the name of the game to remake everything.
Of course.
Michael Jordan, I guess. Yeah. It would have been interesting to make a sequel featuring a 30-year out Michael Jordan.
I would,
25 years post-retirement.
I hope they have him in it at least.
That would, a cameo would be great.
A cameo would be perfect. Because then he would be like Bugs starts with Jordan. He was like, sorry, I got to show you who the new people are or something like that. I don't know. Some type of pass the baton type of a sequence. I don't know. I don't even know what to do with this movie. There's so many things about Michael Jordan in general that I just really appreciate. And then there's all the brand things on top of him. I'm like, okay. It's it's like when Mason said, "Oh, he's riding with the general now." It's like,
right. About the Snoop Dogg. Yep. It's kind of a ridiculous film, let's be honest. But I guess depending on how much nostalgia you have for it, whether it's a fun ride or a bumpy ride. So with that, Chelsea, what would you rate this film?
It would be really hard for me to give this more than 2.5 stars. Really hard, even reaching up to that. It's 2 to 2.5 stars. If I would have had more nostalgia with this, then I could probably push it up to 3 just because, but I can't do it. So 2.5.
2.5 from Chelsea. So I'm going to give it 3 stars. There's a lot of nostalgia with me in this film, having grown up with this film, watching this film a lot of the time. I can quote the majority of this film as a result. However, it is just such a silly, loony film. It doesn't really make sense. And Chelsea says that the pacing is like all over the place. It feels very segmented, where it's like this happens, and then you go to this chunk and this chunk. And I definitely can see how that is true. But for me, as someone who hasn't watched it, grew up watching it a lot and hadn't watched it probably in 15, 20 years, I still felt that it was pretty quick. The pacing was pretty good on it. There are parts that are just, weird and bizarre. I really enjoy the back in the human world with the NBA players and their troubles and trying to figure out what's wrong with them. And yeah, I enjoyed that and thought that was just a funny moment and probably one of the better parts of the film, to be honest. Like, I love that Charles Barkley scene.
That was the best scene. Like the sad Charles Barkley but it's the music on top of it too. That's just like, oh man, this is.
Yeah. There's so many like little gems in this movie that are hilarious and fun. I like Lola, but at the same time, like, she's just kind of there to be a hot love interest who's super talented at basketball and really, capable in all things. That's cool. But yeah, so 3 stars.
Cool.
All right, guys, let us know your thoughts on this movie. Go to rotoscopers.com/193 to leave us your reviews. And yeah, that was Space Jam, guys. I really think your enjoyment or not of this movie mostly has to do with, did you grow up watching it? But then again, you didn't grow up watching it, Chelsea, and did you enjoy it, or you did not enjoy it?
Once I started watching it with Marissa, I enjoyed it more. I think that's because it's like watching it with a little kid or like going to like a theme park with a little kid. It's always more fun. Christmas is always more fun with little kids. Just because you can kind of like see just the simplicity of it and not be thinking of like how it should be. And you can just like accept it for what it is. And so once she came and sat down, I started enjoying it a lot more and judging it a lot less and just being like, all right, whatever, I guess we're on this ride. It's not something that I'm like, all right, I want to go back and rewatch this. I may end up going back and rewatching it just to be like, why? But outside of that, like, I'm good. When you're watching it with people who are able to enjoy it, then your enjoyment of it is a lot better. So
it's their Space Jam, y'all. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Animation Addicts podcast. Our next episode is going to be Klaus. We are moving into the holiday season, and I'm really excited to watch Klaus. I have never seen it before. It's been on my list. I just haven't gotten around to it. I have checked it twice. So we will be doing that, and we have a Diamond patron who will be joining us as well, which will be super exciting. But yeah, until next time, guys, we are the Rotoscopers.
Gotta get up. Let's do it.
No,
that was really not funny, but
that was not.
That was anticlimactic. I try, okay? Like I throw these things out there, and it's like if they happen, all the better. If not, I can always cut it in post.
All right, before we dive into our review of the Animation Addicts, no.
And just because there's a lot of, muscle training that you do in these things, that you just end up taking to some things easier. But it's just, I don't know where I was going with this.
Neither do I. You've been listening to the Animation Addicts podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to help spread the word, be sure to share the podcast with your friends on social media. Just don't forget to tag us at Rotoscopers on Instagram and use the hashtag AnimationAddicts. For all the links and full show notes for this episode, go to rotoscopers.com/podcast. Now, if you still can't get enough for your animation fix, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and visit rotoscopers.com for more animation news, reviews, and interviews. Thanks for listening.